There was something in the game last night that I would like to talk about.
Okay.
And it's a little more of a serious topic. And the topic is the yips.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something that is very personal to me because I've been through it. And it's something that a lot of people do not and cannot understand unless you've been through it. But the reason that I reference this when it comes to the game is because the Dallas Cowboys kicker, Brett Maher, missed 4 extra points in a row last
Brutal.
night. He missed 3 all regular season.
Yeah.
He missed 4 to start the game last night, every extra point. He finally made the last one. He went way right, then a little right, then way left, and then off the upright right. So, look, he did it 3 times all year.
Yeah.
It was a mental thing. And that's when I tweeted out that Brett Maher, he has the yips. And then I went on to say, people are going to laugh. People are going to laugh at what he's doing tonight. But in fact, it's not funny at all. He's going through the yips, which I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. It is an absolute nightmare. So just to set the scene, I can give you the literal definition of the yips, which, by the way, Webster Dictionary tweeted the definition out last night during the game.
Ooh.
So they were on it. But the definition is a state of nervous tension affecting an athlete in the performance of a crucial action. Brett Maher was going through that last night for sure.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we've seen it at the highest level with athletes. The last big, I think, media talked about one with Simone Biles at the Olympics when she sat out a couple of her different events for gymnastics. Like, it can be dangerous in some sports when you get the yips.
Yeah.
It's a serious deal.
The names that come to mind for me, Rick Ankiel, Chuck Knoblauch, Daniel Bard recently, and Chuck Knoblauch and Ankiel probably being the most famous examples of this. And it's a very, very big baseball thing for sure. But look, it's very difficult to understand this. And I wouldn't wish this upon my worst enemy. I really wouldn't. It is a living nightmare. And it is something that you can't get out of your head. It is something you take home with you. I promise you, Brett Maher is not in a great place today, despite making the 5th and final one. It is something that remains in your head. And I have dealt with this throughout every stop in my career. I dealt with it in high school, I dealt with it in college, and I dealt with it professionally, all in different ways. In high school, I was playing third base, and one day I overthrew the first baseman, which isn't something I often did. And it got in my head. And then for an entire season, I couldn't throw to first base. I would choke it straight into the ground. I would throw it 18 rows deep in the stands. I would go home and I would practice my throwing motion at home. I would yell into my pillow at night because I was so frustrated and it seemed there was nothing I could do, because in practice I could do it over and over and over. But the second the game turned on, I would catch a ground ball and I'd immediately get in my head. And there was really nothing I could do about it. And then in college, I had it. Different scenario. As a pitcher, again, this one isn't going to be like you think at all. I had the yips in terms of when there was a runner that got on first base, I legitimately could not come set. Like, I could not come set without picking over to first base. It was a constant struggle. It was something that I just couldn't get over in my head, that with a runner on first base, I have to pick. So I legitimately couldn't make the motion of getting my sign and coming set. I'd like freak out and jump over and throw to first base. And it took me a while to get out of that. And then professionally, from the outfield, a little bit less of a problem. But, you know, I struggle if a cutoff man was like 10 feet away. Like, I just catch a fly ball and the guy's like 10 feet from me. I struggled to just throw it normally. Like, that short arm motion when a guy was so close to me, I basically had to like throw it as hard as I could to be fine. But it is a mental nightmare. And to watch a player go through it in a huge game in front of millions of people it was really tough to watch last night. It is a tough situation. It is something that I have been through, and it is something that if you haven't been through it, it's really hard to explain and really hard to understand. But there are ways through it, and there are ways you can cope through it, which I can talk about in a second. But Alex, I haven't even really talked about my bouts with the yips before. So,
yeah. No, I never had it while I was playing soccer throughout my life and in college. I think because I was always doubted and I had to like prove everybody wrong that I deserved to be there.
Yeah, I've never been doubted,
but
or had to prove that I needed to be somewhere.
But the closest experience that I've had to the yips is when I was throwing out the first pitch at Angel Stadium, and we spent an entire pregame of me like, and I grew up playing softball and I was a pitcher. I was great. And like I was in the bullpen. I was warming up with all the pitchers. I was throwing strikes. I was on the field beforehand, like tossing it with Mike Trout. Like I was great. Everything was awesome. And I remember Tim Salmon kind of telling me like, hey, something changes the moment you walk out, like for a first pitch. Like even players feel this. And I just remember walking out there. Mike Scioscia looks at me. He's like, you better throw from the mound. We're all watching. I was like, okay. And something clicked in my head and I walked out there. I legitimately forgot how to throw the ball. I didn't line up. I couldn't feel the ball release out of my hand. And I was like literally what is happening? Like as it's happening, you don't really realize what is happening, but you're like trying to be like, wait, but I'm a great athlete. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this. I've done this my whole life. What is happening? And then after, that was probably the most embarrassed I've ever felt in my life. And it should be like a joyous, like cool moment. It's not that big of a deal, but it's such a weird feeling when that mental thing switches in your brain and you're like, I know how to do this. Why isn't it happening?
So the yips really come into play when you go back out. If you were to do it again, then it's in your head, then you're screwed, and then you can't do it. And then it just comes back and back and back. And there's some very, very famous cases of this where I think we have video playing in the wall. If you're watching right now, you can see Rick Ankiel, Chuck Knoblauch. Ankiel just legitimately was one of the better pitchers in the game of baseball and just got the yips and couldn't throw a strike ever again. Knoblauch, one of the famous cases, New York Yankees for like a good 3-year period from second base, could not throw the ball, a routine ground ball to first base. He'd throw it in the stands. He'd throw it straight into the ground. I've played with guys. I played with a catcher professionally that had them really bad in college and had to legitimately drop down to a knee, scoot out to the side to even be able to get it back to the pitcher. Producer Taylor, who works on this show, I saw he tweeted out that it's happened to him. I have a buddy that was a catcher professionally, and he got the yips. He used to have to put a piece of tape around his wrist so that when he'd go back to throw, when he would catch that white piece of tape in the corner of his eye, he would know to release the ball.
It's so weird.
And it's something that it can be the most common thing of all time for an athlete. Throwing a baseball. How many times has a baseball player done that? Millions. I mean, it's the easiest thing of all time to do. But when you get the yips, it's these very basic actions that become so tedious and difficult, and it wears you down. It wears you down at the field. It wears you down at home. It is agonizing, and I truly wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But there are ways to work about it, and I know there's a lot of people out there that might have the yips or have had them that might be listening to this, because I know I promoted I'm going to be talking about this. And for a while, it's, oh, you don't mention the Y word. You don't talk about the yips. What I would say is that you should. And don't hesitate to get help. Don't hesitate to see a mental coach. Don't hesitate to see a therapist, because it is a mental battle you are dealing with. Talk about it. Talk to somebody about it. Don't hold it in and just think to yourself, oh my God, and you will tear yourself apart. I promise you, I have done it. It is awful. Talk to people about it. Work on it. Practice, work on your mental game, talk to a therapist, talk to a mental coach. There are ways to get out of it, but don't be scared and embarrassed that you're going through it, because it is something that people that make millions and millions and millions of dollars and are the best in the world at something, they go through it themselves. And we saw that with Brett Maher last night in the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I think it helps that mental health is more of a talking point these days, and people are aware that everyone is going through something and you are not alone. So I think that helps as well. Because, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a mental lapse that you cannot get out of your own way.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for watching. If you love flipping bats, swinging 3-0, or just talking ball, join us.
Call us at 213-537-9339 with your questions. We have a weekly guest, and we have a lot of fun, so hit that subscribe button.